Hello, everybody. NewBeat here with my friends as we get ready for another episode of Recall, about to be named something else. We'll get to that momentarily. But I'm NewBeat here with Tikatee, Ageless, and our special guest today. So welcome, Coach Koby. You may have seen him as a caster for Elo Hell's Get Good tournament, or as a coach donating his time to teams of all skill levels. Welcome, Koby. Nice to have you here today.
Thank you. Very excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's going to be a good time. And as I already alluded to, Ageless, we do have something to talk about with the name of this program.
Yeah, so we fully did the branding, the name. We all talked about this name at length. We thought it was a great name. It was a good name. Turns out there's like an entire YouTube channel already called Recall. And it's like
you can
really
tell we did our
popular.
research.
Yeah, we did a lot of market research.
I mean, it's still a good name, to be fair.
It's still a good name.
It's not our name.
It's just, yeah, it's someone else has a really good name. So yeah, that's the way it's gonna go.
So yeah, we'll be changing that up soon. If you're in the chat, you can always drop a suggestion. Ageless, I don't know if you're gonna give out some kind of poll or anything like that, but
yeah. So like we had kind of like internally talked about a couple names. So far we have Crossfade, High Ground or The High Ground, and Shot Call, which I think are all very good options. If you have other suggestions, let us know, please.
Other Overwatch jargon.
and
Yeah.
we will vet it this time.
Yeah, and we're gonna check YouTube to see if there's already, say, like a channel that gets 500,000 views, that already has the name. So we'll check it out this time.
It's really amazing. So to get this started, Ageless, just give me something good that's happened to you this last week. Obviously, the name not being one of them, but you know what has been good for you.
I am going to Hawaii in like 4 weeks. 4 weeks.
Nice.
Oh, nice.
That's awesome.
I'm very excited for that. It's been pretty rainy in Vancouver, so I'm excited to go and hit the beach and hopefully do nothing for like 10 whole days.
That's the best.
Well,
kind of vacation.
hopefully you luck out with the weather, because Hawaii can get rainy at times as well. Like it is an
It's
island.
gonna be like a warm rain though. It'll be like it'll be like a shower.
Okay.
That sounds awful. You're just on the beach, getting hit by a shower.
I'd rather get rained on in Hawaii than where I am right now if it was sunny and nice. So
Yeah,
That's
fair.
true too.
Yeah, I know. I was in Vancouver recently for the Quest I'd open, and it was like cold rain every day, all day. It was absolutely miserable. But Tikatee, what about you? What's good?
With Overwatch, not a whole lot. I've had a disappointing view of the games this weekend, but we'll get into that later. What's good? Oh man, I've been playing a ton of Multiverses. Have you guys seen that game that just launched its pre-alpha?
No.
It's
yeah,
like
yeah.
The DC platform fighter, kind of like a Smash clone. It's super fun. I'm getting absolutely rocked by sweaty kids online, but I'm having a ton of fun doing it.
That's my experience with like any fighting game. Is I think I'm good and I go online for about 4 minutes and just get wiped out. And you're like, yeah, well, forget about this game. I'm never going online again. So
That was like when we tried Splitgate.
Yeah, that
Oh,
was bad. That got rough quick.
That was super fun until they decided to put in like skill-based matchmaking, and then like the actual good players were like doing angles with portals and everything and like farming montage clips off of me. Oh my god, that game got sweaty quick.
Aegis and I thought that would be good for us because we're like, now maybe we'll play the bad people, and that just didn't seem to happen either.
No, it got way worse. We got into that game like super early, and we were like, we're gods. We're these OG
Unstoppable.
Halo players just kicking the shit out of people, and then like matchmaking started, and it was horrific, and we stopped playing.
it's like very similar to my story with that game. So like I didn't put this in my bio, but I was an ex Halo 3 pro and Halo coach. Is how I got my start in esports. And then when Splitgate came out, all like the old homies got back together to play Splitgate. We had the same like thing. We're like, we're the greatest. Like we're unbeatable. And then like one day, like a light switch, we were not unbeatable. So I had the same experience. That was that game was fun for like 2 weeks.
Yeah,
It's good.
it-
Good to know we're like all on the same page over it. Kobe, what's been good with you?
Well, I mean, I don't know if this is good or bad, but I turned 30 on Wednesday.
Nice.
Last Wednesday.
Wow,
Yeah.
Happy birthday.
That's cool. Yeah.
I should put this on. I still have this from my birthday stream. It's my 30 tiara. But
Oh, beautiful.
yeah, cute, right? So that was fun. My wife threw me a surprise party. It was the first birthday party I ever had in my life. It's probably the most I've seen like friends from different groups all in one place. So kind of wholesome, but that was definitely the coolest thing that happened to me this week. It was really, really awesome. Definitely not Overwatch related, but I don't want to. We'll save that. We don't want to raise Tick's blood pressure yet.
Yeah, that's totally fine. Like we're just starting off with some good stuff. It doesn't have to be Overwatch related. Kobe, mine's actually very much related to yours. It was my birthday on Saturday as well. So we had,
Oh, that's my wife's birthday.
know,
That's awesome.
and Harvester, our producer, is my twin brother, so it's his birthday too. So birthdays all over the place.
Lots
So
of
we had like
babies.
it's Labor Day if you go back 9 months is about
Yeah.
where that's coming from, but at least Labor Day in Canada. But yeah, we had the family over, and like the Harvester and his wife and kids came over, and it was like a big family kind of dinner and stuff, and it was very nice. It was a good kind of first time to get together for our birthdays in a couple of years with all the the pandy and everything else that's happening. So it was really good to get all back together. And with that, let's jump into more Overwatch League related stuff. So we had another very interesting week in the Overwatch League. A lot of upsets, a lot of weird plays, which I know we're going to get into a bunch. But just to kind of get into it, does anyone have any kind of general takeaways they wanted to talk about from the past week?
I have a lot.
I know.
Okay, general news. This was first week of APAC, which is exciting, right? We're finally getting to see the Korean teams and the Chinese teams all play each other. They had a super weekend. I think every team played 3 matches this weekend, which is insane for an Overwatch League team to play 3 matches over 2 or 3 days. So very intense games, a few disappointing matchups, I'll say. I think a lot of predictions got boomed, just like day 1 of NA. But I think it's cool to see the differences between NA and I wanted to just always call it the Korean region, but it's full of Chinese teams too. So I'll just call it APAC. It's always cool to see the differences. Always cool to see like the different pacing and the different way they play the different maps. That we're finally seeing APAC teams on push for the first time. We're finally seeing some of these new rookie rosters and stuff like that. So it was definitely really cool to see all those matches. I didn't get a chance to see all of them because I don't know about you guys. I'm not waking up at 4 a.m. to catch them live. So I'm always just trying to catch up, review them on stream, or just catch them up in my own time. But lots of interesting matches. It's good to see Overwatch is back in full swing. We're getting matches, a ton of matches every weekend now.
It's very important too because I want to get that Reaper Luchador skin, so I need the Overwatch League.
Gotta farm those tokens, exactly.
So I'm really glad that that we have all these games back, and it's going to be the same next week. I think they're starting on Thursday for matches, so it's going to be just packed for the next little while. But Tikatee, I know you did watch Shanghai this weekend. What were your thoughts on the Dragons?
So, correct me if I'm wrong,
Buckle up.
but
Here we go.
everyone expected Shanghai to still be not only the dominant team in APAC, but in the world, right? Like, everyone had them and Dallas Fuel at #1 in each of their respective regions and expected them to be like, again, like literal titans, not of the Vancouver variety, but titans of the Overwatch League, and they're the teams to beat. And then day 1, their absolute first match, they get blown out of the water in a 3-0 to Philly. And I don't want to take away anything from this win from Philly because they absolutely played out of their minds. I reviewed this whole series. I've spent 3 hours going over the VOD trying to figure out what the hell Shanghai was doing. But Philly played out of their minds. And their rookie talent especially, we have to shout out their DPS line, Zest and MN3, are absolute maniacs. I remember, there was such a contention for like who's going to be rookie of the year in NA, right? Like everyone's talking about Proper, everyone's talking about Finn, and now we see all these in the APAC region, all these rookies coming in too, and they're just also insanely cracked at the game. So it always blows me away seeing fresh faces come in and just blow these veteran pros out of the water. Seeing these players starting on Widow over Carpe, for example, is not something I was necessarily expecting, but I was thoroughly impressed. MN3's Widow was absolutely monstrous. Zest, Genji, and Echo was absolutely insane. So always great to shout out rookie talent, and definitely expecting Philly to go far. But then on the other side of the coin, Shanghai Dragons are like going back to their 2016 roots and going back to like throwing, like literally throwing these games. There was, I think, but in their 3 maps that they did play against Philly, I think I saw 4 fights start with Lip just ripping a tactical visor and getting jumped on and instantly blown up for no reason. And there's so much like, there's so many individual decisions I could not understand. And then beyond that, so many macro decisions that, from my perspective, I have to give them the benefit of the doubt. Like I'm not behind the scenes. They may be trying stuff. Maybe not everything's sticking. Maybe they're coming into their own momentum. I don't know yet. But there's so many things I just didn't understand and could not defend macro-wise with some of their hero picks even. But for the most part, like just the way they're starting fights, like simple things like alt economy exchanges and stuff like that, stuff that people have been figuring out since the game launched. And I would say that's probably one of the things that hasn't changed too much from Overwatch 1 to 2. Definitely there's less ultimates in the game, but if anything, that kind of makes that level of macro play more important. And the exchange of resources, like the greatest example being using a tactical visor and expecting the enemy team to use a sound barrier to defend it, and then you clean up after the sound barrier with a Genji blade. This is something we've seen in almost every match in North America. There's this huge exchange of ultimate resources, and you need to be able to plan around these things in order to actually get value from what I call like your closing resource, like what's actually expected to win the fight after all the dust is settled, after all these things go back and forth. Shanghai Dragons just throw that out the window. They just throw ultimates at the wall and see what happens. And most of the time, since Philly is showing that they're a very well-structured team and they got star-studded talent on their roster, just shut that shit down as soon as it pops up. So it's extremely disheartening to see Dragons play so disconnected. And they did clean up after this match, and they did play better later on in the weekend. But I cannot understand how they got 3-0'd so decisively from Philly, and how it would look to me like mainly a macro win. Like, yeah, like Zest and M3, like I was saying, they absolutely popped off. But Dragons also have a star-studded roster, right? They're going up against Lip and Fleta. Like, these are monsters at the game. And they were just not able to play the same level of Overwatch that Philly did. So huge shout out to Philly. Like I said, they're looking to be one of the best structured teams in APAC from what I've seen so far. And I know Dragons are going to bounce back. I know by the end of the season, they're going to look like the Dragons we knew from last year, the world champs. But it was not it this weekend. It was not it their day one. They just were not playing the same game. If I were to throw like
used to?
Sorry, go ahead.
Do you think they're so used to just being like, we're the Dragons, and we decide that we're going to start visoring to open up fights and screw this, and maybe they're not used to teams catching up?
I absolutely think that. And I think actually the same can be said about Seoul, but I don't want to get into too much about all these APAC teams. They all have their own unique problems. We'll just leave it at that. But it feels like they're used to just being able to run the lobby. They're used to being able to get away with outstanding individual performances from Lip, from Fleta, just to name a few, not to mention Void, Lee Jae Gani, Zayagi, like all of them are star-studded roster members. So it felt like they're just used to being able to get away from this stuff. And just like, maybe it's working against like teams like the Valiant or the Charge or even Chengdu, like in scrims. But then going up against Philly, they obviously weren't ready for the level of play that Philly was presenting, and it just crumbled almost instantly. It was very uncharacteristic of the Dragons, to say the least. And like I said, just so little coordination and macro play. And oh my god, this looking back at Circuit Royale, I'm having flashbacks. I'm going back now, and it's just the amount of times that they're playing Zarya. Oh my, I want to go on like 50 different tangents right now. There's so much I want to talk about that just disappointed me. Just
Shanghai right now.
Just Shanghai.
So
the one thing I was just gonna say the one thing I'm stuck on. The one thing I'm still stuck on is the fact that Dallas Fuel did an interview, and they talked about how their inspiration for Hansman's Zarya play was how all the APAC teams are running Zarya, and we are seeing almost every APAC team running the Zarya almost everywhere. So it's like, yeah, okay, they should probably know what they're doing. If they were the region that started this meta, and they were the region that inspired the Dallas Fuel to show how dominant they can be with Zarya, I'm expecting great things from Void, one of the top names when I think of Zarya players. and then he's just walking into fights using self bubble for no reason, and then they'll use like an ally bubble on Lip on like a Widow grapple, and then they'll just run away and wait for the next bubble. Like they're not even thinking about engagements when they're using bubbles. We didn't even see Reaper half the time, which was like the staple engage tool for Dallas Fuel on most of the NA teams. Eventually we did see some Reaper, but even then, like, they're not capitalizing on the flexibility of Zarya's kit. They're using her as if she's in Overwatch 1. They're using her to like passively build energy, which is such a slow playstyle. And the majority of the time, even though Philly was doing the same thing, they just got outpaced in terms of DPS cooldowns, in terms of aggression windows, and in terms of how they can hold space with Zarya, because they're trying to play her like an off tank still. And now that she's the only tank in the game, using those resources is so strict. You need to have really clean execution around those windows because they're short windows. It's not like a Rhine Shield or a Diva Matrix or anything like that. It's not even like Winston Bubble in Overwatch 2. You've got a very strict timing to use those resources. And when Void's just walking up and hitting shift, I don't understand what their goal is. It's really weird.
So
But yeah, rant over.
Yeah, speaking of teams that we all thought were gonna be good and so far don't look very good at all. The LA Gladiators got swept again. Like we're back into the whole Sadiators territory, maybe. And Kobe, I'm gonna let you start this one. It was another, say, shocking result.
Yeah, not only getting swept again, they got got them. Yeah, they got reverse swept again, which is somehow worse. But yeah, you know, that first of all, what a crazy match. Obviously, anytime there's a reverse sweep happening, but against you know, two like what I would consider powerhouse teams like that, and also teams that are fundamentally different from my perception in the sense that kind of how they rely on winning the game. And I just the whole match was absolutely insane. But I have some really, I think, kind of like interesting takeaways in the sense that I was really excited to see the Gladiators DPS line live up to their potential. Specifically Patafan. I don't know if after week 1, Patafan had my favorite tweet, which was, I believe the tweet was, I fed first point, I fed second point, I fed third point, and I fed your whole family too. And it was clearly self-deprecating, obviously, on his performance and wasn't happy. And absolutely went nuts this week on Soldier. Absolutely went nuts, and you know, I think obviously the Gladiators DPS playmaking, just how strong, how insane their DPS line is. Obviously, Kevster is an absolute demon and has been forever. But I think that their DPS playmaking kept them in a match that they honestly had no business winning. In the sense that they made a lot of plays, or they really just went absolutely nuts and would generate 2 and 3 picks, not even getting the trades that we've kind of become used to seeing in the first couple weeks that decide points. They would open fights early with picks. They would just make exceptional plays or position, just take positions that I think Philly wasn't ready for, or they would imbalance the fights so early that it really kept them in the series for longer than I think they were. And as the series went on, specifically as Philly started to catch up, you saw the mental start to take effect on the Gladiators, and they couldn't close out the game. But I really feel like the Shock's macro gameplay, and Tick and I both tend to be macro nerds, but it really stood out to me that the macro difference of the Shock in particular. I mean, you know, I made the comment earlier, crusty gonna crusty, but you know, it's not surprising to see that happen the way it did. But I think Shock's macro gameplay was literally consistently superior, and really sought to capitalize on small mistakes that the Gladiators made. They played really patient, counter dove really well, and waited for those very small positional mistakes. They almost baited, I think, towards the latter games. They waited for those DPS to try. They like almost like they realized like, hey, they're winning because of individual plays or hard play makes. So they allowed them to try to get a little out of pocket or just push the envelope just a little too far, trying to make individual plays, and immediately punished. And every time they did that, they started winning fights, you know, really decidedly. And I think once that started happening, like I said, the Gladiators' mental crumbled, and Philly just grabbed the reins. But San Francisco just grabbed the reins. But
Philly on the mind.
Yeah, Philly on the mind, right? But I also thought it was funny. I don't know if you guys caught the caster curse, and heading into Yeah, heading into game 3. I was like, they were talking like, well, there's no way they get reverse swept again, and I was like, they really just did it to him. Lemon Kiwi did it to him. So, so they obviously got cast circuits, but the Shock was clearly the mentally stronger team. They had a game plan. Even they stuck to their game plan. They executed their strategy to perfection, and they really looked like a very, very strong macro team. Showed us why they were 4-0 heading into the game. And I'll finish this segment with a little bit of what might be a spicy take, even though it's not that spicy. In that I think the Glads, much like Shanghai, are individually so strong. They're so good, especially with how their DPS are really coming into form, that if they improve their macro gameplay even a little bit, I think they'd hands down be the best team in the league.
Interesting.
They're that explosive when they're good, and the things that they're missing are somewhat fundamental to me. They're things that I would consider wouldn't be acceptable for like one of my college teams, for example, or for even like a lower elo open division where I would seek to criticize them the same way. And it's almost, I guess I don't want to say mind blowing, but it's kind of somewhat amazing to me in the sense that you watch how like the things that they're making mistakes on, and I'm like, how are these mistakes being committed at this level? Similar to what Tikatee's talking about, or you're like, this seems almost incongruent with the level of players that they are. So I don't know whether that's early season jitters or we're just thinking too much about play makes. Obviously, this play that's on screen right now was absolutely insane with the nano visor and stuff, but that's the kind of thing that continually won the Gladiators fights. But I think if they really, buckled down on the macro and stopped allowing themselves to be so punishable, they're really a force to be reckoned with.
I think it's interesting to, like, when you think of it that way. Go ahead, Jason.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think it's interesting. Like we talked about like before the season even started, like going into Overwatch 2 and 5v5, that these teams would be able to pop off more and get these crazy plays happening, and there'd be more individualistic moments and that type of thing. And what we see now after a couple of weeks are these teams that have the talent to just basically win on skill alone are missing some of the macro elements to their game, and it's costing them dearly.
Yeah,
I think a big thing. Oh, go ahead, Koby.
I was gonna say no. I completely agree. Only like the macro elements we're talking about, it's almost like back to basics in that when you go back and watch like the game we're talking about in particular, you literally watch the Shock wait to use their resources second. You wait for the Gladiators to engage or use resources, and it's almost like the entire Shock, you watch them come alive the second that happens, and they kite it so that they get no value, or they once they minimize the enemy team's resource value, they deny value, then they're like, gotcha, and you watch them explode and just win every fight. It's like it's repeated. You watch it over and over again. It was very clearly their game plan, and it's that is like wanting to use resources second is like the first macro thing that almost any coach will say to any team ever. It's like the min-max of resources and being the ones to be able to capitalize it, and you're capitalized on your resources, and I 100% agree with you. The game obviously is much more prone to individual playmaking, but some of these fundamental macro concepts, I think teams are just still really, really figuring out where their feet are with those and how to weaponize them in the new world, if you will.
It seems like they're just getting like mentally and like you get reverse swept by Dallas, which super strong showing in the first half for them. You come back, you got Shock up 2-0, and like it's got to be in your head like, oh Christ,
not again.
There's no way this happens twice.
Right.
And like, I cannot get over just how bad they fumbled this. And yeah, I think you're right. I think if they could manage to play 3 maps in a row and show up for 3 maps in a row, they could crush. And I think they'll probably trade back and forth with Dallas. They'll probably trade back and forth with Shock. But they just cannot seem to string together 3. Like you see this in other sports too, though, like in basketball or hockey.
Don't say
Yeah. Adam's other favorite teams cannot string together 60 minutes. But it's exactly what it looked like. Was a team that like didn't have the discipline to finish the game. It's like they're playing really well, they're way ahead, and we even see it in like scrims. a team will be like absolutely mowing a team down, and they'll have wiped the floor with them for 3 maps, and then the last 2, it's like they felt like they already won. And I feel like Gladiators, I wonder if it is like a mentality or a discipline thing.
Yeah, it's almost like an overconfidence thing, which is like, oh, we got this, we're rolling, like we proved ourselves we can do this. But I think it's probably a little bit of that, and I think, like you said too, it's just coming from the position of being, of having them in the first half, not gonna lie, kind of mentality, and then having that happen to them once already, and the second that the Shock wins that match 3 to put them where they were gonna put them away, the oh my god, not again, this can't happen, this isn't happening. I think that sets in pretty hard, especially when you have like I think Patafan had a great showing, but I think he's the player that comes to mind right away, where clearly is very hard on himself, is very committed, and I think you can see some of the mental happening in those instances where it's like, hey, we're killing it, we're doing well, but this can't be happening again. And then you see the anxiety set in, and the mental takes its toll, and then when you're playing against a team that's so fundamentally macro solid, again, Krusty's team, right? A team that's so solid and is ready to play to punish mistakes. You up the frequency of those mistakes because of mental, and then they have more opportunities to punish, and you get the outcome that we saw. But I totally agree, and I think if they, like you said, even if they could just string together, not even matches, I think if they could string together a series of 4 or 5 fights in a row where they're really strong with they're really heads up into the gaining their position, staging the fight, simple things, tracking ults, being a step ahead of the enemy team, and really dominantly control 4 or 5 fight wins in a row, that puts their feet firmly on the ground. I think that they're nigh unbeatable, or at least very, very strong. I mean, no one's unbeatable, right? But
and Shock, like throughout every match, you'll see them like win unwinnable fights.
Mm-hmm.
And they will consistently, I think.
Aegis is gone.
Rip.
So
he's back.
Back to the spawn room.
I'm back.
He's back.
I got DC'd. Okay, we're back.
That's a good recovery. Good recovery.
Yeah, they pull out these unwinnable fights, and they seem to do it pretty consistently. I'd say more consistently than other teams, and they seem to be doing it with like full matches now. Like, it's not even like, oh, we're down 2, we're still gonna win this fight. It's like, oh, we're down 2 maps, we're still gonna win this. Which is incredible. And I think, as like talking about like the discipline maybe struggling for Gladiators, it's massively there. And I don't know if, I guess you guys would probably know much more if this is like a coaching thing, between, in a halftime, like what do you do? What are you saying to your players, I guess, when you're down 2-0 like that?
You want to go first?
Yeah.
You go first.
Yeah, sure. I mean, just to touch on the original part of like Koby, you were saying like those sort of comeback bait level plays that Shock is doing, that's been their style for years now, throughout. And this is like basically a brand new roster, right? So this is not something that's instinctual to the players, I don't think, but I think very clearly comes from structure and coaching decisions behind the scenes. I still remember there's a play ingrained in my brain where Super is being chased. I forget who they were playing on Numbani second as Reinhardt, and he's kiting down those stairs on second point that lead up to the high ground, and it's literally him versus 6 people, and he turns that fight around with a 6-man shatter and pins and kills like 4. And it's just like that level of confidence in those high tension moments, and that ability to stay calm and read not only what the situation is, but to actually identify an advantage that you can force, is so uniquely Shock. There's like there's teams like Dallas who look like they've just got this overwhelming aggression, and there's teams like Shanghai last year who look like they've got the structure and the individual talent that can't be touched. But Shock's whole, I don't want to call it like gimmick or anything, but their identity as a team has looked like it's just like every fight is winnable. They're like the anime team. They're like, you're down and beaten, and then you hit Super Saiyan 3, and you just bounce back. And it's just they're ready to go at any moment. And I think that's definitely part of the structure built in. And I think it's really impressive that level of culture has already hit these rookie level players this early into the season. And to what you were saying about Gladiators, like if they can learn some fundamental basics, if Shock can ingrain that system into their players and have that level of consistency every match they take, they might feel unbeatable, just like they have in the past. They might be one of those teams that just feels like, oh, it's the Shock, where we can never count them out, right? Even in like a quote unquote losing matchup, a losing fight and things like that, they'll always find a way to claw their way back into it. So definitely really impressive stuff. And I would have to say, yeah, 100%. I think it comes down to the coaching staff.
I think it's funny because like obviously Krusty is not an underrated coach, but at the same time
that would be a hot take.
Yeah.
But at the same time, maybe is an underrated coach. Like one of the best, but at the same time, like took a roster of rookies and they look like absolute vets. They're baiting out these mistakes like they've been doing this for years in a brand new game. Like I don't know that there's many other coaches that could figure this out with a roster this new.
Yeah, I would say at least I can't think of another coach that has this much of an obvious impact on their players. There's probably a lot going on that we don't see, but it's obvious with Shock because, like you said, they look like a team of vets, and they're just not. They're a team of rookies.
100% agree with the how obviously, and like there's something about, you know, coaching just transcends just teaching players what to do, but it's something about obviously like, you know, having a player base that you impact that much, the sense where they you know, that they eat the dog food for lack of a better term that soon, right? Where you know they're you know they're working with their coach and they've clearly absorbed so much of it and they're implementing it so quickly, is unbelievable, and a testament to you know, a testament to kind of how close Krusty is with his team and the bonds that they're able to form, and how what he's able to do is unbelievable. But you know, I was chuckling at the absurdity tick with you mentioned the Nimbani play where Super kites them downstairs and then shatters 6 and then kills 4 of them. Is the, you know, just the absurdity of the notion of like of from the coaching perspective of Krusty watching that play happen, and as 6 people are chasing one Reinhardt down the stairs, Krusty thinking, yes, exactly where we want.
Yeah.
We got them exactly where we want.
Just like the simulations.
Yeah, right. This is exactly like we planned.
Call an ambulance, but not for me.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Like it's so next level. You know, it's so like you said, the confidence is, you know, is the confidence in and of itself is a powerful weapon.
The confidence, the trust in the system, everything.
For
and
sure.
just the fast turnaround time.
The investment, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
From the players.
So, just kind of moving on here, another team that has a bunch of confidence so far after the opening weekend for APAC are the Hangzhou Spark. They had a pretty good start to their season.
They're looking great. Like it is kind of like mixed results, but I think they're one of these teams that has a lot to look forward to. Bernard played really well on Zarya. I think up till yesterday, though, Gushue hadn't won a map on Winston, which seems wild to me. Like Gushue, just in my head, is one of these like immediate like, oh, absolute fantastic player, is gonna hard carry, struggling hard. And I do wonder, it kind of reflected a little bit to me where we see these teams just getting so much more value out of Zarya just in general. And I feel like every time they're like, let's play some Winston, it just doesn't seem to be working as well. And I do wonder if that's the way the meta is just going in general, because you will see even like struggling teams like Valiant, like Vancouver, they look better on Zarya just in general. And I don't know if it's just like the play style, it lends itself better just in general to a lot of these players, or if is it just an easier composition to execute, or like, I guess, I don't know. That's what Tikatee. What do you think about this?
All right, you ready for a hot take?
Always.
Zarya plays more like a main tank in Overwatch 2, and Winston plays more like an off tank. And what that means in a coordinated level in the league is that Zarya can be more proactive with her resources that benefit her DPS for follow-up plays, i.e. her projected bubble, whereas Winston can't just dive in alone, not even to the level that Doomfist can, because if his resources go and they like fall flat, they don't find guaranteed value, which is very hard to set up and guarantee unless you have Primal or Nano or something, then those resources are telegraphed of where they are for the remainder of the fight. Winston goes in, he's there with Bubble. There's no off tank peeling away for a side angle. There's no off tank DMing him in to guarantee that his jump's even going to land or that he won't get slept by an Honor or anything like that. So Winston at a pro level right now is being played a lot more reactively off of DPS aggression. What I'm seeing a lot of, especially with Tracer Soldier compositions, is either the damage from Soldier onto the enemy tank or a flank angle from Tracer will necessitate defensive resources before Winston even does anything. And then Winston will jump in to further snowball that level of aggression to get even more. And I think this is why we're seeing a trend of, for example, on push, Winston's being the one pushing payloads or pushing the robot in push maps, because it's not important that they're setting up aggressively. It's important that they're ready to react to wherever the fight starts, but it's not necessarily up to them to start the fight anymore.
Which explains Shock, actually.
Yeah, and I think that kind of explains why Kaluj is favoring so much Winston, because, well, I mean, one, their DPS playmaking potential is through the roof, but also he plays sort of like an off-tank style Winston, if I had to describe his Winston.
Yeah, well, that makes sense.
Yeah, it creates a lot more supportive areas for their DPS to, again, continue aggressive windows rather than create aggressive windows. Again, the exception is when you've got Primal, because Primal, I will still die on this hill. Primal's the best ultimate in the game in pro play. You can do so much with that ultimate, it's insane. But then, yeah, you compare that with Zarya, and it's a much more standard way of playing Overwatch where, okay, the tank gives me something as a DPS, whether that's space, whether that's bubble, whether that's attention, whether that's DM, and then I do something with that space. The difference is that space isn't decided by Zarya's position, it's decided by the range of her bubble. And as long as you've got someone who can go aggressive in that range, we're seeing it done on Reapers, we're seeing it done on Genjis, we're seeing it done a little bit on Sombra, but hit or miss there. And we're seeing great success because it is pretty plug and play compared to Overwatch 1 aggression. You get aggressive with the DPS, it's supplemented by the tank space, the range of Zarya's bubble, and then the DPS either get value from that space and you keep pushing, or they don't and they get out. It's a relatively simple composition, I would say.
I want to jump in there because I saw a bit of a look on Kobe's face, and I may be wrong, but I think you might have a response to Tikatee saying that Primal is the best ultimate in pro play.
You want
to give a rebuttal on that?
So I think it's really interesting whenever Tikatee and I disagree. I guess I'm open to being convinced, but normally Tikatee and I are like, we talk about all the time, are of the same brain, where like you could take any one of our notes and pretty much like swap them interchangeably, and that's largely how it goes. We've worked together in the past on some stuff, and it's always been like that. This is like probably, I can count the times we disagreed on one hand. This is probably one of them. That being said, Tikatee does have the pro coaching credit, right? That he can hold right over my head about this when he talks about how Primal is the best coach and is the best ult in the game. You only saw the look on my face because I see the upside. I understand the perspective, but I don't know if I immediately agree, in the sense that I think that although yes, Primal is the most versatile and it gives us the best word we want, which is options all the time. I don't know how much immediate value it has by itself in a vacuum. So my brain automatically thinks of ults like EMP or ults like Frank, right? That just requiring nothing else from anyone on our team, doesn't require follow-up, doesn't require resources to get in, doesn't require, you can prime people off point, I guess, and win, but like, I just think immediate value spike to team is going to be higher with ults like EMP or Trank or, those are the two I think of right away, but I don't know. I think that it is kind of a hot take, and I know you said you'll die on the hill, that Primal is more immediately impactful than ults like that in every team fight, or in kind of in a random sample of team fights.
I wouldn't say in every fight I would rather have Primal over EMP or Trance or anything like that, but I would say there is not a fight I wouldn't want Primal to be a part of to make it instantly better.
Sure.
So, for example, if I'm playing Sombra, EMP, right? We're talking about EMP as an ultimate just in a nutshell. I don't think there are situations where you just don't get value out of EMP. And there's just straight up, there's compositions where you can't force an aggressive EMP. And there's situations in which it would limit the ability to use that ability, or situations in which the play style in which you're playing Sombra might not facilitate good EMP plays if you're getting forced out, for example, or if the enemy team is able to scout you out, or things like that. But there's rarely a situation where you can't find value with Primal. And I think that's what makes it so strong. You can always use Primal as part of your ultimate composition and find good value to either get value from Primal itself or force more value from an ultimate down the line.
Yeah, I definitely don't disagree. I think, like I said, Primal's the more versatile one. You definitely can find value all the time, every time you use it. But I think in comps or in situations where you're expecting minimal value, or you're not able to maximize the potential of ults like EMP, then you just don't play Sombra. It's the same. It's the same principle. It's the same thing of not playing Winston. You just don't play Winston. Where, for example, Primal's going to
Tell
have
that to Soul.
We're gonna talk about that, right?
We'll get there. We'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there. Yeah. You know, I don't know. Like I said, I'm open to being convinced. I understand your point. I'm willing to say that I think Primal is like a top 5 ult in the game because of its versatility, especially at pro level play. I don't know. I don't know that I'm ready to give it the gold medal.
All right. Here's a better comparison.
Okay.
Would you say the best Widowmaker in the world is the one that hits the craziest trick shot given the perfect situation, or is it the one that hits a 50% headshot win rate in every situation?
I like the straw man argument you have going. And, of course, I picked the latter to play into your point. Right.
I guess that's where my thinking behind Primal get. It's about the law of averages, right? It's about shortening the spread between peak and pit. It's about not just the best case scenario or the perfect ultimate. It's about the range of use and the consistency of its value, which again, like, there's not a situation in which I think you can't find value. I don't think there's a situation where you can't find value from Primal. I think there's a plethora of situations with every other ult in the game, including defensive ultimates like Beat and Trance, where you just don't find value with them.
Fair. I think, okay, we could do this for hours.
Yeah, we could.
I'm taking this back. Okay, Hangzhou, looking dope.
Yeah.
I think they're explosive. They might throw some ridiculous games, which like they like barely lost to the Dragons, and then like barely beat the Valiant. By the way, Valiant is my favorite team to watch.
Really?
Yeah.
That seems like a hot take.
They every game, like they come out and might win, and it's like this like exciting cliffhanger of like, is this it? And it reminds me of like Shanghai, when like every team was like, I don't want to lose to Shanghai first. What was the stats on this? Valiant hadn't won since September 2020. But at the same, like, so we're gonna talk about that later. I'm getting ahead of myself. But like Hangzhou, I think it was a really interesting look. We've seen all these really talented players, and a lot of them we've seen before. And they just kind of seem like this like weird kind of chaotic, like almost like Chengdu kind of team where like they kind of play to the level of their opponent, which I don't really understand. Like they almost beat Shanghai, they almost lose to Valiant, which to me is astonishing. But it really speaks to like the levels in APAC that we could see a lot of, like, just like spoiler games. We could see it's going to be a really interesting season. APAC so far has excited me way more than NA, honestly, just with how close and like the standings have been, and how often we might see just like bizarre trades. Like it wouldn't even shock me to see like a Valiant or a Spark or a Charge come out and then just like beat up Philly next, and you'd be like, wow, that was crazy. But like, not that crazy, because it just seems to be like everyone just kicks the shit out of each other, and then the next game is kind of like, we'll see.
I agree
feels
with
like
your
the Wild West again. Yeah
I agree with your, like, you wonder which Spark is going to show up, like in which team it's going to be. But I also would just call back to like Tikatee's point about I guess the Dragons kind of finding their feet. And you know, you're like, how do you come out and beat that team? And it's like, well, you know, I think that a lot of what you know Tick was saying, talking about the Dragons to begin with, is I would say, to take it further, is that I think that they really fail, or have failed in the games I've watched, to take advantage of advantage states, or to take advantage of positive initiative potential, where they can really push in and make plays. They've been really surprisingly poor at maximizing their aggression opportunities. Is the simplest way to say it. And because of that, they seem to wait for their DPS in order to like kind of create opportunities for them instead of helping create opportunities for their DPS to make plays. I think that's, I think there's merit to both sides. We don't need to get into all that, but it doesn't surprise me as much from that side of the coin when you start to think, well, they came out and they beat a team like that. It's like, well, you have to wonder if that would be the case if the Dragons were standing as tall as they could be.
Yeah,
that's true.
I think it's good to remember too that this was the first weekend for APAC, right? I already brought this up, but just a reminder, again, they played 3 matches this weekend. There's no way they could have prepped for all 3 of them accurately for all these teams. There's no way they properly scouted
all of them.
Yeah, there were definitely some
boring.
some
I don't know,
brighter teams than others. But this is still early days for all these teams. And we said the same for Dallas when they lost to Houston at the homestand event, right? Like, we made a lot of copium, and Dallas is, of course, proving to be a top level team once again. So it's really kind of come down to, I really don't think we can properly judge this season until at least after like the whole kickoff clash tournament. Like, until we've seen a full tournament cycle on this patch with teams playing against each other, learning each other's rhythms and things like that, before we really can gauge an accurate standing. And we're all going to make our tier lists, of course, but it's so in flux right now. There's so much chaos and there's so many random upsets that it just doesn't feel, it's just not refined, I guess, it's not expected to be. It's a brand new game. It's the start of the season. And these teams are going to look, I'm 100% sure of this, these teams are going to look completely different by the end of the season.
And Angels, you're talking about teams that are boring. One game that wasn't boring yesterday was Boston Uprising versus the Washington Justice. This game was absolutely crazy because he ended up Boston winning 3-1, and it was really Boston finally showing something, because we talked after the first couple weeks like the Boston are already dropping the spaghetti and they're just screwing everything up like Boston always seems to do, and then they came out and they 3-1 Washington and looked like the better team the whole way through. You could make an argument that Washington kind of bottled it completely, but as long as Punk is the tank for Boston seems to be pretty good. And whether that's Punk shot calling or whatever else, I guess it's all came in a bunch later and didn't have as much screen time with the rest of the team as well. But like, the one thing I wrote in my notes that I put in here was they should never take Punk out for It's All again. I'm willing to change it later on once It's All gets a little bit more practice. But like, and it's not even that It's All's like the worst tank ever or anything. It's just Punk is like so good in Boston.
Can I double up on that and say never swap out Crimzo either?
Yeah. What? That was okay. Let's just go with that in general. The swaps that Boston were making were like, okay, they've won 2 maps, they're doing good, and then they swap out Crimzo and they swap out Punk, and then they lose, and they're like, okay, we'll take those 2 back in, and then they win again. So it's like, you think you would just stick with what wins. I mean, if you're looking at it from the other side, like Mag came out for the 1 map that Washington won, and then when Mag went back in, they lost. So like, I don't know how strong Mag's been looking so far this year either, but Mag seems to be really like, when he's playing well, like his highs are super high, but when Mag's a little bit lower down, it does not look good for him.
Yeah, Boston's like, we're gonna do musical chairs, but everyone has to do whippets whenever they're on an off. Like, what is happening? Why are you like, oh, we're winning? This feels like a ranked game where you like completely steamroll on the attack, and then everyone's like, let's completely switch the comp so that we just really throw the last half of this game.
Yeah, players just being like, oh yeah, I need to up my win rate on Doomfist, so I'm just gonna play Doom on the defense.
I think of like the Eric Andre meme. That's like the it's like Boston, and it's like the why would Justice do this?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm picturing Crimzo on the bench with the "let me in."
It's so painful. It's so painful watching what some of these teams are doing with their subs. We are going to talk a little bit more about Boston's antics a little bit later.
Yeah.
So.
There's definitely a lot to say about the roster that Boston fielded today. I mean, huge shout out, I think, to Victoria and Valentine DPS line for absolutely pounding in this series. But also, I think they tweeted that like that was a Victoria that only had like 1 day of scrim time before this match.
Oh man.
So like going into that environment already as like I think your first showing in the league, if I'm not mistaken, or no, I think they fielded him a bit before. They've been playing a little bit of musical chairs this whole season so far. But obviously to not be a starter and then come into this series, and again, I think most of us had Washington to beat Boston. Just on paper, their roster seems like it should perform well, and then Boston just blowing them out of the water. Huge shout out to these players who haven't always been starters, but showing that they can turn up.
We literally planned on not covering any of the games from Sunday because we were like, yeah, probably no surprises. So like, everyone, let's just talk about what happened on Friday and Saturday.
Yeah, I remember.
Thank you.
You messaged me and you were like, so like which game are you kind of got your eyes on? And I was like, well, I think Boston Washington's going to be really interesting. And then you just came back like, well, Boston's already up 1-0. So yeah, it's looking like it's going to be crazy.
Just unreal. It made me so happy. Boston's one of those teams that you're like, yeah, they might completely fumble this, but at the same time, they could really make it happen. And yeah, you're right.
This
and
could be their year.
This could they're bringing it back. Apparently, I saw someone in the chat saying that apparently Punk's like in-game leadership is really huge, which makes a lot of sense because they look fucking lost as hell when Punk is not in the game. It is so sad to watch this team play without Punk.
I think you can even go back to last season. You could see when they picked up Punk and they brought Punk in. Or maybe that was 2 years ago because time is a flat circle and it means nothing at this point. But when Punk came to Boston and started playing for them, like you could already see like when that team was doing quite poorly, the minute Punk showed up, like there was an improvement. And I think that really shows the in-game leadership that Punk really has. And I think they're really going to need it because Boston only has one match next week and it's against Dallas. So they got to really shore that up.
So we won't cover that.
If I ever want to rewrite the script, this will be the time.
So yeah, so with that, like we can pull up the standings for week 3 as they are sitting right now, 3 weeks in. Like you said, Tikatee, I think it's worth not going too heavy into this until we get a couple more weeks in our belt because it's still crazy. But just looking at the West, the one thing that really sticks out is the Gladiators in 8th place. Like I know we've already touched on them, but that's the one team where it's like they seem a lot lower than they should be or just really out of place.
Yeah, I mean, when you have London holding down 3rd place last week, someone's going to have to pay the price. So it's definitely a strength of schedule thing. Like those 2 reverse sweeps are against the other 2 best teams in NA right now. So it's like, yeah, they've got a couple L's under their belt, but really what was expected, like someone had to pay the price in those matchups and only one team can win everything, you know? So it's rough. And we're going to probably see a rough seeding for Gladiators come the tournament, unfortunately, because of this. But that could lead to a really interesting early bracket and things like that. But yeah, this tournament, what are the dates for the tournament again? It's not next week, it's the week after. Is that correct? Question mark? I'm so bad at keeping up with dates.
Me too, but I think that's right.
Yeah. So there's only a couple more weeks of games. There's only one more week of games, right? Before these teams are properly seeded for the tournament and we start seeing the matchups, how the bracket might unfold. And that's, I think, where things are going to get crazy. Because I think we're going to start seeing things like Dallas Fuel Gladiators round 1 kind of thing. Maybe Atlanta Houston round 1. Like one of these teams maybe deserves to stay in the upper bracket, but because of the way the standings are working up, whether it's strength of schedule or getting double reverse sweeped when you had a hard choke and things like that, that are costing these teams. And I think people are starting to realize now that we're in this tournament format in the Overwatch League that we say this every year. This was kind of like a joke internally with coaches, but like they say this every year, whatever the tournament staff would be structuring the stages and the brackets, like every match matters, which was so not true in season 1, where like as long as you won enough, it's just like you were just on the next stage and stuff like that. But now it actually feels like every match matters because these seedings, especially for the Gladiators, could just instantly knock them out, and that's rough.
For sure. I actually think that while we have this graphic on screen, this was something I was going to bring up a little bit later. But I know this is slightly off topic, but if you look at the Shock's map differential compared to the rest of the teams.
Oh, it's nuts.
Yeah,
It's untouchable.
Yeah, if that doesn't tell the story of like macro and map prep individually of like, you know, of the Shock's process, which we were kind of talking about earlier, then you know, I don't know what does, but clearly a team that's committed to understanding how they win on every map they play.
Yeah, and again, like we were saying about Shock Structured, like they're probably the one team I'm not worried about come future metas. Like after this tournament bracket, when the patch hits, who knows what's going to happen next stage? Like maybe there's a new hero. They're probably going to be the first team to fully understand their pacing and the way they play the game before anyone else, and we might see similar results next stage as well. So definitely got eyes on Shock. Everyone else could be a mixed bag, but like we're saying, those top three definitely expected to perform, but I don't know, man. This first tournament could be wild.
That's one of the coolest things I think about this year is that it you know, I know that obviously I just talked about how good Shock is, and I've been kind of gushing about Shock this whole episode, but it really is kind of still like, I feel like anyone's game. Yeah, you know, I think we could be in for a lot of surprises. There's not at least to me like a far and away this team is superior in every way. Like I think of like old NYXL or something like that, where I'm like, wow, they're really hard to beat. I think the teams are a lot closer, given the new game, than I think that even maybe we realize, and maybe the power rankings display. Maybe that's a hot take. I don't know.
I think like San Francisco, Dallas, Atlanta, Gladiators. I wouldn't be surprised to see any of them take a match off of each other.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be like a big upset anyway.
Not any bigger than we've already seen, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like honestly, at this point, like the only thing that would really surprise me, I think, Ageless, and this is like I'm directly calling you out on this one because I wanted to pull this back for a second, is that the Valiant aren't going to win a match soon. I don't have a lot of faith in them. I think they're going to stay near the bottom of the table. I think that streak of like a million losses in a row, it's not. I don't think they'll beat the Shanghai Dragon streak, but they might come closer than you think.
I think they're gonna absolutely shit stomp Chengdu. They play them on the May 29th. I think Chengdu, it looks wholly unprepared for what they've gotten themselves into. And I feel like Valiant is just like not quite there repeatedly. Like Dia, it's so nice seeing Dia back. And they are very much playing the old, like, we're just going to pocket Dia and see what happens. And it's like, so far it's working out. Like almost each time. I don't see them being Shanghai. I don't see them beating Philadelphia Fusion. Like that said though, like these APAC teams are playing like three games a weekend. You can't prep for all of them. Like, is this gonna be what happens where everyone's like, we really gotta prepare because we gotta deal with Shanghai, we gotta deal with Philadelphia.
So
and like nobody preps for.
Yeah, you're saying
Valiant.
people will ignore the Valiant and not plan for them at all, and that's where the upset comes from.
I think that might be it. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, no.
Like, oh, we didn't scrim against Reinhardt compositions because Reinhardt doesn't exist. Oh, it turns out he does exist, and Hottie is everywhere.
Yeah, speaking of Hottie, if we want to get onto our peaks and pits, the first one I wanted to bring up was Hottie, because Hottie got an ace with the Reinhardt, and
Hottie
people are coming into this like, oh, like how's the Reinhardt gonna work? Are they gonna be able to keep playing the Reinhardt? And the Hottie just comes out swinging for the fences and just kills everybody. It was honestly my favorite part of the whole weekend. Like there were some other like crazy plays like we've already seen in other highlight packs, and even like in that Washington-Boston game, Happy came out in the Widowmaker and got 3 at the end of Kings Row, which was really fun to see. But this 5K from Hattie was absolutely phenomenal. It was so good.
Yeah, it's
Oh yeah.
Good lord.
Yeah.
Just
Just a charge.
That charge that just killed Bap, that was sick. I do want to say, just as a, not that this play wasn't fantastic, but London did lose that map.
Oh yeah.
In a Rhine mirror.
Oh, absolutely.
So like,
I didn't
kind of
say
a situation where like there's so many shining lights on London right now because they are a unique team to watch. They are a fun team to watch right now. They're a fun team to root for, despite probably not being one of the stronger teams in the league. They are making waves. But if you're gonna lose the mirror, like, are you even the Rhine team?
Yeah, yeah, extremely true. Yeah, well, was it Piggy on Reinhardt? Yeah, that doesn't
Yeah.
surprise me actually. Piggy's a
To be
monster
fair though,
fighter.
I don't think Piggy hit a single shatter this whole round. So Hottie definitely has that lockdown. But in terms of like the way they were playing the composition, it didn't look as deeply understood even as Houston's comp on defense. Like they weren't using Maywalls or Sim TPs as creatively as Houston. And it's like, if you're not pushing the limits of your one comp, are you really even reaching your own potential as London there? Like, do your thing. Play Reinhardt everywhere. Do your thing, sure. But at least push yourselves. Don't just settle for being the gimmicky team. Be Clockwork Vendetta. You know, be the gimmicky team that still wins when they shouldn't in these kind of situations.
Well,
Be
you're
the team
perfectly.
where if you play down to their level, they will absolutely rock you out of the ring.
Yep, for sure. This is one of those moments where I was going to say that, and then Tikatee says it, and I don't have anything to say.
Sorry,
They
Kobe.
might not win, but they're still the best.
it's just like they're making it kind of like must-see TV whenever London shows up, because kind of like what Ageless was saying about the Valiant is like you never know what's going to happen. It's like that Chengdu zone kind of area of like what in the hell is about to go down here. But like it was, I think the reason I was so happy watching this is because of how bad London were last year. And like at times Hattie looked like they really struggled, especially like on any tank that they played, not just the ride. So to watch Hattie come out this year and be like, I'm gonna get a 5k and like an ace and kill everybody all at once, it was almost like a little bit cathartic to see Hattie just get like his moment in the sun.
That's
He
awesome.
definitely deserved it. Yeah, for
Oh,
sure.
That's how I feel about
I like
Punk,
that way to
too.
think about it. That's awesome.
Like,
Yeah, I would agree about Punk for sure. After everything, like obviously
Right.
I've never worked with him. I don't know that much about him as a player individually, but everything that comes out about this kid is so positive. Like whether it's
Right.
about his shot calling, his leadership, his play in general, and just sort of like his rookie story coming into the league from an underrepresented region for sure. And then seeing him finally be able to pop off in a game like that versus Washington, definitely well deserved for Punk. And I have to bring it back again, my homie Crimzo. Gotta show the Canadian talent representing, gotta show the X-Fuel member getting the win over Decay. Definitely a highlight moment for him as well, that whole match.
At the risk of setting this panel on fire, I want to call out a comment I saw in chat a few minutes ago, where
No.
Blair said that her prediction is that Punk will outplay Hanbin.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's-
anything's possible.
maybe Punk is nice.
Yeah, that was my reaction to that too. That raised my eyebrows a few minutes ago. But
Yeah, Tikatee, if you believe hard enough, you can fly.
Yeah. You're
Hey,
just
Red
not
Bull
really
gives you wings, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, if anything's possible, like I guess, but I don't.
Hey, if Piggy Ryan can beat Hottie Ryan somehow in that match,
Hey.
then yeah, maybe Punk can beat Hanbin Zarya.
Yeah,
Don't take anything off the table.
yeah, right.
Like another like that was a peak. Moving on to a couple pits that we have. One of them was, I don't know if you guys saw Reinforce at the end of yesterday's broadcast. He went on a little bit of a rant about how teams shouldn't use Sim to roll out anymore with the teleporter. Basically saying like, we don't need this anymore, just speed boost out with Lucio. And Costa was just beside himself because he's sitting there going, well, just it's faster, dude. Like, why? Like, that's why people do it. So you guys, you've coached high levels. Sim tellies, like, are they still a worthwhile strat here in 2022?
Yes. Like it's like saying like why speed boost, like you have passive speed, it's good enough.
Yeah,
Like,
why would you
this
want-
isn't even an argument. This is like, I know Reinforce wasn't being serious and this was kind of
Yeah.
just like a content rant, but still, like, if this is like peak Redditor opinion right here. Like, this is like someone who sees it is like, wait, I don't need to do this in my game in plat, so why would a pro player even think about doing it? It's inconceivable. It's just like, it's such an obvious advantage to have the first fight rollout, and like the player that TPs is usually on like a tracer anyway, so it's not even like they're lagging behind the team, so Reinforce's whole argument just goes out the window. But yeah, this was just silly. It's all good fun. I recognize that, but
Like
this
just
shouldn't even be on broadcast. This is what fuels Redditor opinions.
You can see the look. You can see the look on his face, right? Like he knows he's talking shit right now. Like,
Yeah.
there's nothing about what he's saying that he actually believes in it. But you honestly do see those opinions. Like I was playing a lower elo game. This was like probably a couple of years ago, but I was playing Reinhardt. Enemy team, enemy Hammond drops minefields. So before the mines go active, I'm swinging at the mines to like clear a bunch of them out, and then you put the shield up, and then you're pretty safe from the minefield. And I had some guy just flaming me, like, "Dude, what are you doing swinging at them? Just put your shield up. Just put your shield up." I was like, "Well, no, you can swing first, and also we won the fight. Like what?" But like this guy was like incensed, and that's what I thought of when I saw Reinforce go on with this rant.
I have nothing else to say from the coach's perspective. With Tix, I think it's perfect.
Yeah.
Yes.
I guess I might add that I think there's an argument who said that it's even more important now to gain that 50 meter advantage you get out of telly or whatever with speed, just because the game is so trade oriented. So first position or speed to power position to positional advantage is so relevant that putting yourself in an advantage to win first fight, specifically on game modes, you know, that we're really relying on those like Poth or Push, is even better than it was previously. But
Like Ageless, we've seen it a million times in games we've casted where the team that gets like to the point or to even the area that they want to hold in the first fight on a King of the Hill map is going to have a massive advantage for like the next 2 or 3 fights, it seems, because they're where they want to be, they're comfortable, and they're forcing the other team to be uncomfortable. So exactly like you said, Kobe, like that 50 meters is super important. I guess it was more of a rhetorical question. Like I think we're on the same page there as far as the sim tellies go. But Tikatee, I know you saw another play this weekend that really got the motor going a little bit.
Oh yeah. I was actually looking at this earlier today, and I lost all patience with Soul after I saw this play. So I didn't highlight any peaks this week. There were a lot of standout moments. If I were to just pick, there wasn't like one moment, but just in general, like MN3's and Zest performance from Philly, 100%. Absolutely outstanding. Blew my mind how good these players were. But there were so many moments I couldn't highlight just one. But there was one moment that I think this was probably the least coordinated Overwatch I've seen in the Overwatch League, at the very least so far this year, but as far back as I can remember. So this clip is from Soul. And I mean, I think we should just play it. It kind of speaks for itself. It literally just shows 2 DPS players not thinking about their actions. So yeah, there's this moment where Prophet's moving forward as Reaper and just dies. As, by the way, who he's walking forward and shooting a gun at right there is a Rhine shield, and then the one person that would have enabled that Reaper aggression would be an EMP from the Sombra, and it comes a full like 3 seconds later just to die. Or not to die, but to be forced out and kill nobody. It just made absolutely zero sense when I saw this. When I was analyzing this match, I was trying to figure out why Soul was underperforming in this series, and it was just these players aren't willing to work together. Like if Prophet's going in and he gets Zarya bubbled, he knows his timing. And Fitz knows that timing, and they must be talking in comms unless they've got a grudge against each other for some reason. But to see that level of disconnect between those, I guess 3 players if we include the Zarya, because like the Reaper got bubbled, no one followed him in, he's shooting a Rhine shield. During that too, I looked back and I saw what Fitz was doing on Sombra, and he was trying to dry hack the Genji of all players in that moment when he had EMP charged and Prophet's bubble is about to expire. Like, there's a very strict timing in Overwatch 2. There's only so much you can do with the limited resources you have with a single tank now, and you gotta work faster than this, guys. You gotta do more than walk at them as Reaper and wait 5 seconds for an EMP. This isn't like you're playing against double shield anymore. This isn't like GOATs where you've got infinite amount of time to work with your resources. This is very strict timings. You have the limited window of a Zarya bubble to find your synced aggression as DPS members. You have the ultimates available to go for that timing, and they just didn't. They really just dropped their mouse and keyboards on the floor and just let themselves walk to their deaths one by one. I was blown away. because I know these players are some of the best in the world, and to see that lack of discipline or coordination or whatever it was in that moment was so disheartening to see and so disappointing from a team like Seoul, who absolutely should be like, I'm sorry, I know Spark look cool, they're super fun to play, but on paper, Seoul's roster should be demolishing Spark.
It's okay.
It looked like our plat games, where like where like I'm the Reaper and I go and I'm like, oh, I fed so bad. Please do not EMP.
Yeah.
And you're like saying it to yourself, like, don't do it. Please don't. Please don't. Oh,
That's where you go in
EMP.
voice comms. You said, don't use EMP. And then the somber presses you is like, wait, you said EMP?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's actually my favorite part of that whole interaction, leaving the EMP alone, because it is what it is. And just like the angle that that clip exists at, where it's like the 3/4 of Somber just EMPing hard nothing on point is gold. Literally owl gold.
What?
Yeah, I mean,
I would not understand.
leaving that aside, my favorite moment is just Prophet just W down main, just directly in.
Shooting a Rhine shield. There's no one else around.
It's just Wing into a Rhine shield. There's no one else around. But then the best part is the part that I like, the part that like makes me like blink at my screen is when Prophet gets bubbled and he's shooting a Rhine shield, like not taking damage. There's nothing else that's aggroing him. There's no need for the bubble at any capacity. So not only is Prophet like just inting just directly into a Rhine shield and doing nothing, then then the Zarya bubble comes in. Like what are you bubbling? Like where is the Zarya bubbles?
It's not like he's TPing or anything.
Right. There's nothing.
By the way, that whole series was like a whole lot of Papega from all of Seoul, because I saw like 3 different Reaper TPs just either get bubbled way too early or just not end up where Reaper was supposed to TP to. Like Prophet didn't know how to line up the Reaper TP in like very obvious situations. Like there was one on that map alone where he meant to TP like onto the bridge, and instead he just TP'd onto like the high ground right before the point. And it's just like, you have one ability on Reaper. Like you got one move that you gotta land, and you don't land it in that situation, and you're a professional level player. Again, like at this point in the series, I don't want to like smack talk the players too much. I know there's a lot already going on in their heads. I know they're already kicking themselves for moments like this. So I do want to focus on at least some reasoning maybe behind it, because they were obviously boomed at this point in the series, and that's never a good time as a player or a staff member to be in those games for any longer than you have to be. But man, if this becomes a trend for Seoul, it's very worrying.
Yeah, yeah, it's mystifying to me. Just that I think that talking about peaks and pits, my pit was gonna be, I was gonna say Void Zarya, but I really think like the Zarya bubbles in general, like the Zarya performance in general so far, especially given that when you pick Zarya as a tank in Overwatch 2, bubbles are, if not the single most important cooldown that the team possesses. And one of them, like top 3 cooldowns the team possesses. So to just kind of be so cavalier with them, or like almost careless to not intentionally weaponize them, to like, you're not using it to protect the Reaper, you're not using it to get charged. Like it's it's thoughtless. And like you said, I don't want to dog on the players too bad, right? I'm certainly not saying that I could do better. It's one of those things where it's it hurts to watch sometimes.
Yeah, but especially when you've got Hanbin in NA putting on a masterclass. Right. And like I was saying, like Fuel did an interview where Hanbin's, or was it Hanbin or their coaches, said that they drew inspiration from APAC because APAC was running a lot of Zarya. So they picked this up after the APAC region teams. And I think it's consistent across the board. Every Zarya I saw in APAC was playing this really slow, like build charge as if you have a Reinhardt in front of you type of Zarya play. And it's extremely limiting for their DPS. And like I was saying, like Zarya kind of functions more like a main tank now. Well, like the traditional sense of a main tank of creating an early opportunity for their DPS by using that projected barrier. And if they just don't have the barrier, hi Archer. And if they just don't have the barrier because they're wasting at charge, that's like 5 to 6 to 7 to 8 seconds where they're just doing nothing, and it's opening up opportunities for the enemy team to engage with them. It's so needless.
100%. I think like, and we had this conversation too, we're talking about like self bubbles in general, is like, I think I would want something I would literally make my players do nowadays is every time they use self bubble, I would make them justify to me why they self bubble in this situation. And I think that, I think it's a good exercise, but I also think that unless you're using it to like firmly not die or hold space, which are kind of the same things, then I struggle to think that it's in any capacity more valuable than using it for the million things you can use it for otherwise.
Yeah.
I totally agree, Tick. I totally agree.
Kobe,
Sad.
thanks for that tip too, because I realized what I do wrong with Zarya, which is I try to hold space and then die. So I've clearly screwed up the second step in that two-step process. So I'll definitely have to make a note of that. Go to that going forward. We also like to take a look at players that are less known in the Overwatch League, or maybe playing on a not such a good team at the moment. And it's funny because Tikatee, I think you've mentioned this DPS duo a couple times already. But the one thing I wanted to highlight is kind of a diamond in the rough, and really isn't that much of one considering how good they were in contenders and how good they've been already. But Philly's DPS side, MN3 and Zest, are just absolutely bananas. And I remember watching that game against Shanghai and being like, yeah, Shanghai kind of screwed it there. Like that, I don't know what they were doing half the time. But like MN3 and Zest look really, really good.
Yeah, I will say too, Philly was only able to outplay Shanghai at a macro level because they were able to keep up at an individual level. If Shanghai's just playing lower level teams who can't match them in star power, and they are able to just let attack visor rip and kill 5 people because the individual potential is there. Like there are a few teams I think they could do this against, like the Valiant comes to mind, Chengdu, Guangzhou come to mind as potential teams that they could just farm, and they probably were farming in scrims. But then they go up against even level talent. These are Lip and Fleta we're talking about. Like these are contenders for MVP like every year they've been in the Overwatch League. And then these rookies come in, like you said, they're not unknown talents, but to the Overwatch League they're brand new, and they absolutely dominate the lobby. It's super impressive to see.
MN3 in particular for me was unbelievable. MN3, I was literally standing up screaming, "Who is this kid?" Watching MN3 just lose their mind.
I 100% agree, but there was like one clip on Zest, and I wish I saved it now, we could bring it up, where Zest was playing Echo and he copied who are used Genji, and he just dominated. It was actually like so superhuman, the level of reactions and accuracy he had just moving around the map on King's Row. I really wish I had saved the clip because I just remembered it now, because I was also just like all about MN3 the whole match, and then Zest showed me that because like I don't think we had seen too much of Zest POB before that moment, and I was just like, oh my god, this kid is the future. It was insane. It's the same level of like when you see Proper on San Francisco Shock, like that level of intuition and just mechanical control it's superhuman.
Hey, do we want to argue about something else? Like, if I say just the blanket statement that Proper got Tracer diffed by Kevster, what do you think of that?
Ooh, that's spicy.
I don't think it's.
I would need to see. I haven't analyzed that game personally yet, so I would need to take a closer look. But that's spicy. Mm-hmm. I'm high up on Kevster too, but I would say like Proper still should have the
absolutely is nuts. But yeah, I watched that game, and that was one thing that struck me. I was like, Kevster is literally diffing Proper, and that's like not something you expect going into that game, obviously.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And Ageless, speaking of his as well, I know I've already mentioned the Valiant, and I've kind of rebutted you on that. Is there anything else you wanted to mention about the Valiant's start to their season?
I said it before, I'm going to say it again. They might not win, but they are the best.
I thought you said they were going to win.
I feel like there's a gifted sub bet somewhere between you two. NewBeat says Valiant's not going to win a match. Ageless says they're solid. I don't know.
Nah, Ageless, we can get together.
They're going to pound Chengdu.
We can get together.
Embarrassment.
We can get together at 3 a.m. and watch that game or whatever time it is.
Yeah.
Throw money on the table.
They're like one of my favorite teams to watch now, because I'm like, are they gonna come out and just like kick the crap out of Shanghai, or are they gonna get completely diffed by like a tier 3 team? We don't know.
I think Chengdu in 4.
Yeah.
I
don't know.
I should start writing these down here. I'm gonna say Chengdu's gonna take it. I'm gonna say Chengdu's gonna take it 3-0 just to go right back at Ageless. I'm gonna say they're gonna just 3-0 him. Not bad.
I think everyone's gonna wonder what happened to leave.
I think I just ruined my pick'ems for next week.
Tick, come on, you're the only one that hasn't good one.
It's hard because like APAC is in such a weird spot, even compared to NA, because like I would say like the bottom 3 teams on paper and in theory right now, it's hard to say, it's still too early, would be Valiant, Chengdu, Guangzhou. But those 3 are still way closer to the rest of the pack than Vancouver is to the rest of NA, than Paris is to the rest of NA, than London is to the rest of NA. So even though they're like bottom 3, and because there's only 7 teams in the league, it's a super competitive region. And this season's going to be crazy because I would not be surprised to see any of these teams upset any of the other ones. I mean, Valiant beating Shanghai might be a bit far-fetched right now, but like, what if we see crazy changes? What if Shanghai can't keep up with the next meta or these things, or if even this meta, depending. But yeah, like it's so hard to predict. If any one of those teams at the bottom, I'm predicting Chengdu to take some really big upsets. I don't have a score line in mind or anything like that, but I see them. What if I say like they finish top 2 this upcoming tournament?
Like, so you do think they're gonna take out the Valiant, though, right? Like
Hey, we were going for spicy takes, right?
I think Chengdu could come in and absolutely beat up any of these top teams. I still think they will lose to the Valiant.
Ageless, I think that Shanghai Dragons could beat the Valiant with 4 players.
we're gonna start the Cleveland Browns versus Alabama discussion.
Yeah, that's basically versus the Cowboys. Everyone loses.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right,
I
Crew versus the Valiant. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I honestly like I feel like Chengdu is the same kind of thing where they seem to just like play to their opponents, where they're like, yeah, maybe they'll just beat the crap out of Shanghai. Maybe they'll lose to Vancouver. And you just don't really
That's kind of
know.
been true for a while now, huh? Like a couple past seasons have felt like that for Chengdu as well.
I feel like maybe
you don't know what's gonna happen.
I feel like maybe
Roll the
the
dice.
entirety of like Chengdu Hunter's existence that could be applied to.
I like to imagine Chengdu's got like a wrecking ball D100 in their office, and before every match they just give it a spin, and then depending where it lands, that's their performance level.
Yeah, it might be.
I feel like if the Valiant wins, Ageless is gonna come in here like blasting like we are.
We're all
I'm
off the bets. It's just A-list for 2 hours ranting.
Yeah.
Valiant wins.
I'm just starting up this stream from home by myself. God.
Yeah,
You'll have me back next week just to put me on camera so you can tell me I was wrong and then turn off my video feed.
it's gonna be 2 hours of just yelling, "I was right, I told you," into the camera. Like,
if they lose, I'm never talking about it again. Though I'm removing it from the notes. If anyone adds it to our notes.
But, yeah, I hate to break it to you, but I'll be bringing it up for sure. You can bet. If there's one thing you can bet on, it's that one of us will gloat, no matter which way it goes.
Oh, absolutely. I would expect nothing less.
So we do have some Overwatch League news as well, and Aegis, you alluded to it earlier with the shenanigans that the Boston Uprising are pulling once again. Marvel and Striker have both been dropped.
Yeah, Marvel, they did it first, like earlier today, and it was like, we're parting ways with Marvel. We hope that he finds, a lot of success with whatever he's doing next. And it seemed like there wasn't really a space for Marvel on this roster, especially, we've talked a lot about Punk being kind of like a staple and being this in-game leader and being maybe an out-of-game leader as well. Which seems to be kind of the reputation of Punk. The really fun part of this was the follow-up tweet with Striker, where it was like, yeah, we're sorry to see you go, Marvel. Also, like, kick rock, Striker, you suck and we hate you forever. We hope no team ever touches you. Yeah, Huck said, suck it, nerds. And we dropped Striker. Yeah, apparently, Marvel is apparently just like having a tough time going back to Korea for family reasons, as we're being reminded in the chat. Thank you. Which is kind of what had been speculated, was like it was just not a good time. Needed to go deal with some stuff, and Boston seemed pretty pretty open to that and pretty totally fine with that, which absolutely should be the case every single time. And then it was kind of like, also rest in piss, Striker. Like The wording is so different. The stark difference in wording there is
the intern social media manager wrote the Striker tweet versus the Marvel tweet, the actual social media.
Yeah.
So I went home for the day. Hey, don't mess anything up. No problem, I'll handle it.
Yeah. Also, I'm only drinking bourbon all day.
Yeah.
I think how premeditated do you think these decisions were? Because obviously there was the leak from Halo, yesterday or even earlier today?
It was Friday, wasn't it?
Oh,
yeah, it was
that
like
early. Okay.
It was like a while ago.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't want to say I called this, but at the beginning of the season, when we did our first episode, I was kind of speculating that Boston had a 9-man roster in a 5-player game, which was not unheard of, but very awkward that they had 3 tanks specifically. And I was definitely feeling like, what if they're just kind of trying things and then they're going to drop people mid-season now that they can with the new contract status, just like we saw Naga leave from Paris, and just kind of get away with it, knowing that they had flexibility. They're going in a certain direction now. Marvel and Striker don't necessarily fit that direction. Obviously, Marvel, different circumstances, but Striker specifically doesn't fit that direction.
Yeah, like the wording, effective today, the Boston Uprising and Striker have mutually agreed to part ways. We are grateful for what Striker has brought to the Boston Uprising in his 2 separate stints with our organization, but have concluded that we are, as a team, not the right fit for Striker at this point. Striker is a talented player, and we wish him the best moving forward. This is like, we acknowledge that Striker has been a player for the Boston Uprising.
I love that
this is...
like... Good.
This is like what happens if you like put the wrong employer down as a reference, and then they're like, so tell me about this employee, and they're like, well, they did work here.
Wish them the best.
Yeah,
like,
we hope they're doing great in whatever bullshit crap they get up to next, because they suck.
I love that
like how this
we
reads.
have mutually decided, right? And then
Yeah.
like, 10 minutes later, we as an organization have decided that Striker is no longer a fit for this organization.
Yeah,
It's like,
I'm sure Striker had a big part of that.
It doesn't sound so mutual, like 2 sentences onward.
Yeah.
It sounds like they were like, hey, Striker, we're agreeing to this, aren't we?
We shook on it.
And
No
it was brought up in the
take-backsies.
chat, and also Huck said it yesterday. I think after Boston bullied Washington, Huck said like no player is bigger than the team was the tweet that came out yesterday, which was I think definitely fueled speculation towards
for
like,
sure.
oh, we
That
all know
basically
what that
confirmed the
means.
leaks from Halo. Yeah.
Yep.
There was a quote from Punk too in their post game, right, where he said like, "We are a professional organization" or something. And I thought that was kind of a funny nod to whatever the hell might be going on behind the scenes. Like, don't worry, guys, we're pretty much under control.
Yeah, things are totally fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was unreal. I just really appreciated the most like corporate LinkedIn like get lost
The LinkedIn
you've
burn.
ever seen. The
Yeah.
LinkedIn burn, yeah,
Yeah.
very rare, very embarrassing.
Yeah, and like Ageless, one thing you notice. Well, I'm gonna move on now. I mean, that it does suck to see Striker go. He's been around for so long and is obviously so clearly talented. Like everyone knows how good his tracer is, but it's just one of
I
those
know,
things
too.
where it's just I guess it did not work out for what seems like a bunch of reasons. But
And yeah,
know-
a couple times with Boston. Didn't Striker win the Widow 1v1 at one
Yeah,
of
and
the
I'm pretty
like
sure-
All-Star?
I'm pretty sure almost everyone had him down as the best tracer in the league.
Yeah,
yeah, I would say
Hi.
that.
yeah.
but,
Well, anyway,
that brings it up. If there's clearly something going on behind the scenes, if you're that good at the game and they're still dropping you,
Yeah.
like, well, it was probably going to be pretty bad, right?
Yeah.
yeah,
I
or
don't
just
want to
not worth
speculate
it.
too much, obviously, but yeah, like
Right? Yeah.
there's obviously something, whatever it is, whether it's organization side, striker side, there's just some clash going on there that's not working out. I mean, speaking from a bit of experience, when we had Decay on the fuel, there was an obvious imbalance of expectations between the organization and between the player, and that never works out well. Nothing against Decay. Obviously, I'm not trying to like say that he was a bad player or a bad teammate or anything like that, but like there was a lot going on that we couldn't talk about that obviously wouldn't make PR statements or anything like that, and it was best for both parties at the end of the day. And I'm sure the same is true for Striker in Boston. Obviously, it's so weird to see this kind of thing this early in the season, and things like this happen at any rate. But I'm sure it is, even if not mutually decided, probably mutually beneficial.
Maybe
Absolutely. Yeah.
This is like it's important, I think, to acknowledge like this is okay. Like this is part of the
this
game.
happens.
It's normalized. It's something we should normalize. And like if someone wasn't a fit in their corporate setting in their job, right? It's a whatever, like, hey, fit, it's not working out. We part ways amicably, and is what it is. Like you said, it's mutually beneficial. So I think that I'm with you with not speculating too much, but obviously wish both parties all the best with it. And I do think it makes them stronger overall too, especially if there was some drama happening that now they no longer have to worry about on both sides.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. For me, the funniest part was the tweet that was like,
For sure.
Yeah.
just like, just like the least friendly corporate.
Yeah. And,
So
Yeah,
I do think it's going to be good.
and we can definitely hope that Striker is going to show up somewhere else in the future, because we all know how good Striker is. So maybe they'll be back somewhere down the road as well. One thing that we did notice after this first week, I believe it came up in a tweet from Ageless, you can help me out with this one, but it had to do with the win rates in push games, and the first fight doesn't really matter. Yeah,
Owl stats. Like there was this like early speculation, and I wonder if this is more to do with pro play, because that's where all the stats are coming from. Like early on, it was like, oh, push is a big snowball shit show. And in my games, it was every time, but it's a 44.5% win rate for push right now for first fight win.
All right. There's some nuance here. I think that
you go first, Koby. I've got my whole deck lined up.
I imagine you and I might have a similar take here. If we don't, this will be fun. So I think that our sample size is too small to draw conclusions like that so far. And I also think that it has a lot to do with the way teams are playing it. I will say that I've been very surprised with teams basically staying robot and continuing to walk robot instead of leaving like a Lucio or even like Jake mentioned before, like even a monkey or something quick to re-engage on robot and not pushing to like a high ground pushing to take a fight way out in advance to let robot walk. I think that in fact, I almost wish that I would have prepped for I wish I missed this one on the agenda, because I have a really fun tweet from Tikatee a few months ago where I posted, hey, give me your Overwatch 2 hot takes. And we had a whole discussion about this, about how we think, and we both agreed that I think push, the first fight we both thought push would be more first fight dependent than even matches like King of the Hill. Right. And I still think it, I know the data doesn't support this, but I wonder if it's too soon to draw that conclusion. And I think that if teams did attempt to play it differently, attempt to like kind of walk the robot or back the robot into the space they hold, it might be different. I don't know if that's a map dynamic or that's a choice that teams are making. But what I'll say about it is that teams in the league have not played it the way that I would have anticipated them playing it, which is very interesting. Which is more of and I think if they did play it that way, it would more maximize first fight potential. And I don't mean to sound like I'm saying I know the better way to play it, right? That's not at all what I mean. It's surprising to me, and I would still be I guess the hot take is here that once we have like a couple hundred games of push to sample, I think that number climbs significantly. Still, I don't know. What do you think, Nick? Tell me I'm wrong.
All right, I've got like a 5-part essay ready to go.
All right, here we go.
First point being, I think I've been impressed by 3 teams on very specific push maps so far in the league, in terms of whether they're playing the map what I would call macro conscious, I suppose. They're playing the map well. They're not just playing against the enemy team. They're using the map to their advantage. They're using the push format to their advantage and scaling off of that. The first team being Florida Mayhem, actually. And granted, I think it was their match against, was it Toronto? Where they played Colosseo. where
Yeah,
they
that was
actually
phenomenal.
pushed it all the way in, and they were one of the first teams to actually do that. And they manipulated fight timings and fight zones extremely well on that map type.
I remember
Second
this.
one being San Francisco Shock versus the Houston Outlaws on New Queen Street. They absolutely out-rotated the shit out of Houston. Houston was like behind in almost every situation just because San Francisco was playing the map better. And that's not even like a push thing, that's just like a new map thing. And then third would actually be Philly versus Shanghai in this most recent weekend, because they not only blew Shanghai out of the water, mainly because I think Shanghai was not playing a good macro game, but they showed really good understanding of the positions on the map and manipulation of the robot, our friend T.S. Eliot, or whatever we're calling him, and making sure that they're actually taking advantageous fights at every opportunity.
I'm
So-
sorry, I was not ready for that. Oh my god.
What's his actual name? It's T.S. something.
It's yes, Elliot now.
Yeah, Leg Day called him
Timothy, right?
Timmy.
Yeah.
Yeah, Leg Day
Timmy,
called
yeah.
him Timmy, but
Timmy
T.S.
Smith.
Elliott.
Yeah, Timothy
Yes,
Schmidt.
Elliot for life.
Yeah.
I don't know.
yeah.
I like T.S. Elliott. I'm into that.
Every other push map outside of those three that I can remember off the top of my head right now has just come down to which team is the better Koth team, essentially. Which team takes the better team fights, which team has better ult economy, which has nothing to do with the map type itself. Not to say that those weren't like the better teams winning the maps, but they weren't winning because they played the map better. I think that's a very important distinction to make. So exactly what Koby said, it's too early to say because the map type is too fresh for teams in the league. Even at the professional level, it takes time to adjust to these kind of things and understand how to play the macro game properly in these stages. Next point being, I think these stats are not malicious, but misleading. I think saying the first significant push leaves a little bit too much up to suggestion. So like the tweet, I'm reading it now from the Overwatch League Statistical Insights, and it's kind of sad we don't have Stats Lab open to the public this year yet, right? Like we can't just pull up the stats ourselves, unfortunately. But so according to this tweet, this is for the first significant push, so I'm not counting if a team retreats from the bot at the beginning and the other team pushes something like 1.5 meters before getting killed off and surrendering control. There are a lot of situations where a team fight doesn't actually erupt, but a team is forced to give up space and allow the enemy team to push the robot almost to the first cap point before they choose to take an advantageous fight. This is exactly what Shock did to Houston. Houston had positional control after the first fight, and then Shock played a better part of the map, out-rotated Houston, and then rocked them for the rest of the map. That first push from Houston doesn't matter at all if it just means that Shock is getting a better position to take the actual first team fight. I think better metrics to potentially measure. So again, a bit of a tangent here. Measuring team fights in stats is actually really hard to do. There's so many different ways to, it's like first kill based on certain gap between times, like however you want to look at it. I think better things to look at would be either first like 3+ team deaths or first ultimate used that wins a team fight, or whoever caps the first like spawn advantage point, but sometimes that doesn't happen for a really long time. It's so hard to measure like who wins the first fight on push because there's a lot of map manipulation that goes back and forth. And I think that's because teams in the Overwatch League respect how important the first fight is on push, because they know if they lose it, it's such an uphill battle coming back for them. So even if they're pushing like 20, 30, 40, 50 meters, that doesn't necessarily mean that they've got initial advantage. And I'm worried that that's playing a role into these numbers, because they say as of the 13 out of 29 as of May 21st, there's a 44.5% win rate based on first significant push. And I think that metric is too hard to define, and it's not accurately representation of what the teams are intending to do in game, which stats numbers rarely are. So it's not this person's fault or the stats fault or the way they're presenting this information, but I don't think the information implies exactly what they're saying it implies.
I agree with that. I like that point. I guess I would ask you out of curiosity, so beside the first fight statistics and where a team chooses to take it, and I think that, you know, it's ironic because we were talking about Shock's counterplay before and how good they are at really making sure they have the advantage before they engage and take fights. That's one of the reasons why they're so damn good. Is aside from that, does it surprise you in any capacity that teams are choosing to take the second, third, fourth, fifth, the second plus fight on the robot instead of out in front, instead of trying to take a more forward advantage to like high ground type position and fight there?
Oh yeah, people. I mean, the first week of the Overwatch League, I was screaming about this on stream. Like, people were leaving 5 people on payload for zero reason, and like you would you don't see this on escort anymore because people recognize that, hey, the map's pretty good, high ground's pretty good, angles are pretty good, right? And the exact same concepts apply in push, but I would say even more so because the idea, there's kind of like this terminology floating around called like the 3 fight rule on push, and I've got a whole video essay planned about this, but I haven't put it out yet. But it's basically the idea that if you have robot advantage, if you have objective advantage in push, it's not that you can guarantee that you'll take 3 fights and as long as you win one of them, you'll still be at advantage. It's that you have the option of 3 different fight zones and you can choose which one gives you the best advantage to take based on composition, based on positions, or based on ult economy. And the reason that is because when you're pushing into enemy territory, the fight that you take there on the enemy side of the map is likely at disadvantage because of spawns and because that you're forced to be having someone on the objective. That's inherently disadvantageous. That's why defending is inherently advantageous and high grounds are inherently advantageous on maps like, say, like Gibraltar, for example, or escort or hybrid maps in general. And then if they choose to back off of that, the returning team now puts themselves at disadvantage for the exact same reasons because they have to push the bot now not into enemy space but back into neutral space first, where that second fight might happen. If they allow them to back up, if whoever's defending at that point decides they don't want to take a fight right away, they want to build ultimates, they're waiting for spawns, whatever it is, they just let the robot push a little bit more now into their space, and they've taken essentially not the first fight, not the second fight, but the third fight available to them, which is now heavily at their advantage, not just in terms of positions, likely in terms of ult economy, but also in terms of spawn advantage. There's so many things that play into these team fights that's more than just where the objective is, that dictate what determines or which team has an advantage during that fight. And I think that's what's missing from a lot of teams' understanding of the fight, and that's why you don't see these teams capitalizing on as much aggressive space as they can, because they're not trying to force that long con advantage of all these situations. Like, we don't need to win every single one of them, but as long as we win one of them, we're going to keep snowballing this point.
I think that's an awesome take. I think that, and I totally agree. I totally get like you don't want to push into their space because of the inherent disadvantage of that fight, right? And even if you are putting Lucio on cart, or you wouldn't put Monkey on cart and push, I don't think. My assumption is you leave Lucio the majority of the time. Even if you are though, like there's equipment of resource to even get back to the already disadvantaged fight, like it seems bad. But I mean, even if you are gonna fight from neutral and like turn neutral into hot, right, which is like that second fight, like that middle point fight you can take, it does surprise me that teams don't push and then kite the fight back to the neutral zone in an effort to kind of control the fight where they want it, or at least kite back to where their advantage state is. And maybe it's a respect thing, maybe it's an owl thing where it's like, hey, the enemy teams is, their pick potential is so high, right, or their teams are so good that we're not gonna risk just snap losing a fight by pushing up inherently. Or we don't want to trade resources that early and potentially not be as advantaged as we want to be in the neutral fight. I just think that it just surprises me. I think it's still evolving. I'm still learning, obviously, a ton about it too, and it's proven to shape up very differently than the way that I pictured it would.
Yeah, it's already gone up leagues since week 1.
I think we saw Shock do this, like where they would push up like a couple meters.
They absolutely played hard defense. They did.
Yeah,
and then they would be like, "No, we're gonna hang out at this corner because good luck."
Yeah, and I think Koby, you made a really good point there too. It's and Tikatee as well. Like, it's still being figured out, right? It's not like a solved game yet. Obviously, it is a small sample size, so it's definitely something maybe to keep an eye on, but not put too much weight into at the moment. Another thing we wanted to take a quick look at as well is what they are doing in Open Division as well this season. It doesn't look like they're allowing any kind of ringers or any kind of a late registration, anything like that.
Yeah, I'm curious, Koby, have you been following this closely? Are you tied to any teams that are going to be competing?
I am not actively tied to any Open Division teams. I've worked with several Open Division teams in the past, and I kind of do like guest spots with Open Division teams historically. I think this is a very substantial change, specifically the ringer change. I don't know how I feel about it, to be honest. Just because I understand like the game integrity behind not allowing ringers in that could potentially break the game or change the competitive integrity or I understand that like it's just not if you want to play a pickup game, you play pickup games, right? You don't play an organized thing like, you just bring in the boys, or I shouldn't use that phrase, but bring in the friends whenever it's time to, whenever it's time to play in a concentrated, organized league like OD. But I also think that, at least in my experience, open division teams struggle to mobilize enough people in general to play and to consistently scrim. And I think that if you have 5 people that want to play and you can't get, well, I guess 4 people that want to play and you can't get a 5th, right? And that they're having to not play, having to just snap forfeit and not be able to bring in a ringer, even for a scrim, right? Or even for any kind of organized event, just not even having that as an option if the other team consents, kind of thing, or not even having an option to sub in like an alternate player, just isn't good for the overall game in terms of keeping people engaged in the competitive scene. And I think
it doesn't feel competitive. Yeah, it feels like
exactly.
It feels like rule lawyering people, like in mid-tournament kind of thing.
It feels that people just go play different tournaments or different leagues that aren't going to exactly like rules lawyer, to the T. I understand the logic of doing it. I think it'd be really hard if I was league admin, right? If someone pitched a case to me that's like, these ringers are ruining the competitive integrity of the games. I think it's, I get that they obviously did what they felt like they had to, but I'm all for trying to make Overwatch world dominate, right? I want it to be the biggest game in the world. That's because it's the game that we all love. And I feel like things like this sometimes make that more difficult to achieve. But it's a hard line. I don't claim to know the answer, but those are my feelings on it. They're somewhat complicated.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a lot unsaid in these like official articles too. Like just reading like the tier 2, tier 3 Twitter and announcements of like people like reacting to these kind of things, like bring up a lot of unsolved problems. Like for example, like this was announced less than like 2 weeks ago, if that.
Yep.
Maybe even less than that, and they've already initiated a roster lock. So like if you didn't already have a team together for open division, putting together a high level team that you can't substitute players for in that short amount of time is a pretty hard ask for unsponsored teams. And
definitely,
a lot of people didn't know if open division was going to be a thing anymore with Overwatch 2 beta coming out. People didn't know what game it was going to be on. So a lot of people, I believe, just sort of gave up on the scene. Yeah. So it's hard to like ask that much in such a short time frame and then just raise the barrier of entry beyond that as well. In addition to that, there's a couple of other things I've noticed online from people saying like it's going to be a single elimination bracket when they end up playing the tournament that decides the top 32 who make it into contenders, which is quite often seen as not the most competitive way of holding seeding brackets and things like that, because if you're a new team of star-studded roster talent but you don't have previous tournament experience or previous open division tournament experience, then you're going to be seeded badly. We're going to have like a situation where the Gladiators are playing the Fuel week 1 and only one of them can make it because there's no losers bracket. So there's a lot of gripe in the scene, and to me, I don't have any like information to back this up or anything, but it feels like just a lack of ability to support the scene. Like Blizzard knows how important the amateur scene is, but they're not willing to throw the time and effort in, and probably money, into this scene to properly develop it. So they're doing like this path of least resistance that's getting people up in arms, but at the very least it's presenting a product which, for what is likely the last season of Overwatch 1 in open division, as we know Contenders is going to be on Overwatch 2, probably to them might seem like it's good enough, and it's like be happy you're getting anything kind of deal, which feels bad for a competitive player in the amateur scene, because we've only gotten scraps for the past 6 years in the open division or even lower, and to see it like end off in like such a fizzling way is definitely disheartening. I can only hope that when Overwatch 2 finally does have more public access, that we will see better tournament structure. We'll see more third-party tournaments and things like that. We'll see more support in the scene in general. But yeah, seeing stuff like this, it definitely feels half-baked, and a lot of people are upset about it. There is a little bit of a silver lining that we're even having open division and contenders, but it's so painful to even say that out loud.
Like, yeah, it almost feels like they're just kind of tossing this at you, like take it or leave it.
Yeah,
like
that's exactly right.
Yeah,
it's a 4-week tournament though. Like, this is tough. Like, especially like you're going over this summer. It seems weird that there wouldn't be some sort of a compromise and some sort of flexibility brought in for like, you can have one ringer in one game, or something. Like
Yeah.
give teams a parachute.
I don't know if you guys have ever. I totally agree with that, Ageless. I think that it doesn't need to be all or nothing, right? Like there can be some middle ground. I don't know if you guys have ever had Ageless and Newbie. I know Tick, you have. If you guys have ever been really been exposed to like trials teams or contenders trials teams in general, they are in general the most motivated group of. They're like the most motivated teams I have ever worked with ever. Most of the time, and they are. They care very much. They are unbelievably into it. It's their entire life. I mean, it's their shot, right? Like it makes sense. So I think that the single elimination thing is really, really relevant. Tick, I'm glad you brought that up. And the first thing I think of right away is like March Madness, right? And like, not to make another like American sports analogy, but like March Madness and like the absurdity of the tournament, of the March Madness tournament, and like how how frequently 12 and 13 seeds upset 4 and 5 seeds, and just in single elim games anything can happen because of the pressure, like the micro pressure of the pressure cooking environment that is like the single elimination tournament bracket, where you get one chance to show up, even if you are the hands down superior team. There's no there's no mistakes allowed, right? And I get it on some levels. We're talking about professional athletics or professional sports, esports here, but still it's like it just doesn't feel like the best way to funnel actual top tier talent into contenders. And and I think that negatively impacts the mentality of a lot of these players, that this is their whole world and this is everything they've been working for. And then to be like, well, if we mess up one time, right? Or if we lose effectively one fight or we mismanage one thing, that's it. I just think it's like, we don't have the time or the care enough to give you a double win tournament, even though it's
like if somebody gets sick,
right?
Yeah,
right.
Someone's
Exactly.
internet cuts out.
That's exactly right.
yeah,
A storm passes through, they lose power.
Right.
And,
right.
yeah.
It's like
not to mention that we are dealing with like literally a global pandemic, where like if somebody gets sick, they're knocked out for between
down for
3 and 10 days sometimes.
I mean,
Not having any way to be like, please. So like, does everyone just like sign 10 players to their team?
like Aegis,
Can't
like
anymore. We're past roster lock.
like we were doing,
They
we
locked
were
roster
doing
before they announced this.
Yeah, we were doing the open or the questline open in March, and we had some people missing because of forest fires, and this is in the summer, so like that could there's just so many unforeseen circumstances that can affect this. Like you guys were saying, like there needs to be a safety net, and like these people are so committed. You got to give them
good
a
luck,
proper shot.
California.
Yeah, like there's.
Can you imagine how it would feel to like have to miss a game because of like a forest fire, and then
that's your only shot.
Like you let your whole team down because it's completely out of your control. It's like, sorry, my house was on fire. I had to evacuate. It's like how I would. That's the thing where I would just lay in bed and stare at the ceiling for hours. Like it's you can't imagine how that feels, and it feels bad, man. It doesn't feel great that that's the environment we're putting these players in.
But you might not even have a bed because
social media manager.
Yeah,
like Koby, you might not even have a bed because your house might be on fire. So like right. So that's not the best time to go lie in bed. Right. Yeah, exactly. So with that, we are running out of time for today. We didn't have any community events to highlight. If you know of any community events in the chat, please let us know. We can always give them a shout out later. We're always trying to keep our eye on like lower kind of just unaffiliated events, things we can give a shout out and a little bit of a boost to. Once again, a big thank you to Koby for joining us today. It was an absolute pleasure. It was very nice having you, and I'm sure we will see you again in the future. It was a treat. Tikatee, always wonderful. It just always blows my mind how much smarter you are than me, and I'll see you later. So it's
I'm just
totally
not smarter, just more mad.
Yeah, you're opinionated, right? So with that, thanks everybody for watching. We'll be back next Monday, same time at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. And for my three friends here, I'm NewBeat. Big shout out to Harvester, our producer, for helping us out tonight. And thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.
awesome.